What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest. We're going to go through the latest Detroit Lions news, and this is an exciting Lions Latest video. It's been a minute since we've done one of these, but today we're going to be talking about rookie minicamp, which takes off tomorrow for the Detroit Lions. So you're going to hear about the undrafted free agent signings, you're going to hear about the draft picks, and you're going to hear about players that the Lions are bringing in for tryouts starting tomorrow. So in today's video, we're going to go through the players that we know will be participating or should be participating in rookie minicamp beginning tomorrow. Also, we do have a little bit of Lions news to mix in there as well. When it comes to roster moves before minicamp, the Lions have waived some players, so we'll go through those. Jameson, Williams. We're going to talk about schedule leaks because we may know who the Lions are facing on Thanksgiving, but tomorrow, that's all going to be out, so we'll know the entire schedule tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But there's a lot of things to dive into today, and bettors are high on something. Hold up, that sounded really messed up. But bettors really like something for this upcoming NFL season as of right now. And it has to do with the Detroit Lions. And I think you're going to want to hear this. So let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to my video. Glad you guys are here. And we're back for another Lions Latest video, man. Now, we have a lot of things to touch on today. In today's video, we're going to go through those players, those undrafted free agents, the draft picks, the tryouts. We're not going to do like a breakdown on each one because we'd literally be here for like 7 hours. We're not going to do that. But instead, we're going to touch on each player, give a short little background, things that I may have already seen from watching some of their film. Not enough necessarily for most of them to do a video on yet. At some point, we'll get to a video on those guys. But just touch on them, give you a little background on who's going to be there, what names you're going to see pop up. And it's like, oh, snap, who is this guy? Well, now you'll know. And plus, there has been some Lions news that we need to talk about since the draft, and now that we're getting into really some of these off-season activities. I mean, it began a little bit ago, but now it's rookie minicamp. This one, it starts to go down because now you're getting everybody in the building. It's like, all right, let's do it. Let's make this thing happen. And rookie minicamp's cool because it's not only just the players you drafted, but also the UDFA signings and players that you can bring in for a tryout. So it's really cool. Some of these names may sound familiar. Some of these names you may not have heard of yet. Let's dive into some of these smaller Lions news stories, and then we'll get into the rookie minicamp stuff. Let's start off in Vegas when it comes to Caesars Sportsbook and where bettors are putting apparently a lot of money right now, and it has to do with the Detroit Lions for this upcoming season. So here is the story. Here is what we know. Bettors currently are high on Dan Campbell for head coach of the year. How high are they? Okay, no, I don't know if that makes any sense. This is how high they are. They've had 3 times more bets on Dan Campbell to be the head coach of the year than any other coach in the National Football League for this upcoming season. They've also had 2 times more money, so you know it's not just a whole bunch of people, it's also money. 2 times more money has been put to Dan Campbell being the head coach of the year this upcoming season than any other coach in the National Football League. So we always say, oh, Vegas knows, they know something. Well, if that's the case, hopefully that's the case, because maybe then Dan Campbell is the coach of the year. But to become a coach of the year, you have to be successful. Now, that's not saying you have to go to the Super Bowl or anything like that. We've seen Mike Vrabel win coach of the year. But basically, betting on Dan Campbell to be the coach of the year, first off, means improvement, which I think all of us are expecting from a 3-win season last year. Plus, you look at the way that they approached the draft, the way they approached this offseason. They got guys that could help them right now, and they feel like they can win with Jared Goff. So maybe that gave them some optimism as well. Plus, the Detroit Lions are going to be on Hard Knocks, so you're going to be seeing this team a ton. So there's also that. The Lions got announced that they're going to have the draft in 2024, so there's that. There's a lot going on with the Lions right now. It seems like they're getting some really cool attention. How the draft went to have Aiden Hutchinson fall to 2, that was a crazy story. The Lions trade up, get Jameson, Williams, all the Lions fans that were in Vegas, and now you're seeing this. Now, I will say this, because I don't know who, of course, was betting on the Lions, who is doing it. Maybe it's just a whole bunch of optimistic people, but I do know this. Before the draft happened, I think it was the day before. I think it was the day before the draft, or may have been the night, or may have been the morning of. But either way, it was either the day before or the morning of. Trayvon Walker became the favorite to be the #1 pick in the NFL draft because bettors started going heavy on saying Trayvon Walker was going to be the 1 pick. Now, it was reported then when that was happening that those bettors that were putting a lot to, hey, Trayvon's going to be the 1 pick, they have had a background of being successful. So it was like, oh, wow, they actually may be onto something. Obviously, they changed the betting odds, and Trayvon Walker becomes the favorite. So because of where bets are being placed. So I'm not saying it's those same people. We don't know who these people are. But if you want some optimism, a lot of people believe Dan Campbell might be the coach of the year this season. You take a look at that Trayvon Walker situation and that those bettors started to place the money on Trayvon Walker. So the sportsbook had to change and update and say, okay, you know what? He's the favorite now, number one pick. And of course, as we know, that ended up happening. And they changed the odds on this one, as Dan Campbell was once 60-1 odds. He's now 25-1 odds. Now, that's not saying he's the favorite, but the odds have definitely changed. So we know that's how they do the odds. But maybe some of those, really good bettors in the past that are really good at this have put some money on Dan Campbell because they know those people. If you look at the history of Coach of the Year, there are two teams on here that stick out. Now, all of these have won Super Bowls. Obviously, they've all had success. They've made the playoffs, things like that. But two teams stick out specifically. First off, the Cleveland Browns. In 2020, Kevin Stefanski, winning Coach of the Year, coming off a 6-10 season. They go 11-5. They win a playoff game on the road against a divisional opponent with Baker Mayfield, coming off a 6-10 season. We know about their history. So for them to win a playoff game on the road, it was like, whoa, what the heck just happened for Cleveland? And now there was those super high expectations, and last year it just did not happen, which is part of the reason they went and got Deshaun. All of that. Anyways, the point is that you see that situation, but also I really look at the LA Rams here. 2017, Sean McVay winning Coach of the Year. Why does this one stick out? We brought up the Rams this year many, many times we've done this. If you haven't heard this, you may not have been around the channel that long because we've talked about this a ton. In 2017, the LA Rams, it was the first year with Sean McVay as their head coach. Yes, they went to the playoffs in their first year as he was their head coach. But I've compared this season, the second year of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, to the first year of Sean McVay based on where we're financially, the way we've attacked the draft. You look at how the Rams attacked the draft, they got the weapons for Jared Goff in this draft. They got the weapons. You just look at how everything has played out. It was more of, okay, let's get the pieces around, let's get some weapons, let's support him, let's go get the offensive tackle that Andrew Whitworth will make those signings. And just the process, how they built it, the plan, the way that they built that thing when Sean McVay came in there, and we broke this down for multiple years, not just a one-year thing. But I look at that and I say, okay, Rams made the playoffs, won a playoff game, 11-5. I've compared that. If it is going to be like that, maybe. I mean, it's really interesting. And like the Browns, they know the history. Hasn't been a great history. So if the Lions, even if they just made the playoffs, they'd probably be in consideration to be Coach of the Year with Dan Campbell. They want to touch on that first. Now, a little leak with the Lions schedule, even though I haven't seen really many leaks at all from the Lions schedule, but that's okay. I'm not really looking for them either, so it's fine. I know it's coming out tomorrow, and I'm excited for them. I'm excited for the reveal of the Lions' entire schedule next season, so stay tuned. We may even do that live. I don't know how we're doing it exactly, but stay tuned for that. But I do know this. When it comes to the Thanksgiving game, I've heard two teams would be the Lions matchup on Thanksgiving. There was actually a video that was put out on how they create the schedule, and the two teams that were listed for the Detroit Lions were either the Buffalo Bills or it was the Miami Dolphins. And if they chose this side, how the rest of the schedule would be affected. If they chose the Bills or the Dolphins, how the rest of the schedule would be affected. However, it has been leaked, I believe it's true, that Buffalo and Baltimore will be playing the night game on Thanksgiving. So they're going to have the 8 o'clock game on Thanksgiving, which means, of course, that we can't play Buffalo on Thanksgiving. And we also know that the Lions are playing on CBS. All right, so let me throw that out there. We have the early game. We have 12:30 as always, but we're also playing on CBS. So if we go by what we know so far, it would mean that the Lions are likely playing Miami Dolphins on Thanksgiving at 12:30 on CBS. So there's a little possible leak there. Could be incorrect, so don't hold me to it, but that's what it sounds like. So I did want to throw it out there for anybody that wants some sort of leak to get excited about before tomorrow. If you can't wait, there you go. Maybe that's something, maybe it's not. I don't know. We have 9 home games. Is that something? Hey, we got one more home game than a away game because last year was the opposite. So I know that. Now let's talk about this Detroit Lions rookie minicamp. So I wanted to go through the players first that the Lions have waived before rookie minicamp takes place tomorrow. Obviously, this has to do with roster spots that are open. You're going to have changes. You'll probably have UDFAs that the Lions sign and maybe even got some good guarantee money that get cut. You may get a guy that's, in for a tryout, which right now I think we have 4 players listed that are coming in for a tryout. You may have a guy like that actually ends up making the team or making the team for now. And then when, of course, you get to the 53-man roster cut, you'll see whether or not he makes that cut, right? That's a whole nother level. Like making the team now, it's definitely different than making the team for the 53-man roster cut, because then at that point you may be cut, but you could possibly make it back to the practice squad. So you want to have those guys around through the offseason workouts if you can. So a lot that goes into it, but the Lions did clear some roster space right before rookie minicamp. Let's go through the players. By the way, other teams, they start rookie minicamp at different times. I believe some teams have already started like last week. So there's already been videos and stuff thrown out there of players going through it. But before we get into these players that the Lions are going to have in tomorrow for rookie minicamp, I do want to talk a little bit about some of this Jameson Williams talk. And we're kind of reiterating what we talked about before when we did the live stream with Rad about Jameson Williams. However, there has been reports out there about when Jameson Williams may be ready to go this upcoming season. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit here. The Lions number 12 pick in this year's draft. There was a report put out there on Twitter by Jeremy Fowler that said most NFL executives believe October is a sweet spot for a return for Jameson Williams coming off his ACL injury, maybe November. So of course that would mean into the season. All right, that wouldn't be, week 1, that would be into the season. Now, in saying that, that doesn't necessarily mean that's when he's going to start, practicing for the Lions, because if he didn't start practicing until October or November, you probably wouldn't see him this season. I'm just throwing it out there. You probably wouldn't see him at all. So I'm assuming that still means you'd see him practicing from what they're saying, but they're saying we don't think we'll see him basically week 1 of the season. It'll be a little bit into the season before Jameson Williams sees the field. Now, I do want to point out, I'm not sure if this is new information for Jeremy Fowler or if this is just kind of reiterating what he was saying before the draft, because before the draft, he was saying that most NFL executives believed that he may not play his first season, that it would be a partial year for him. So I'm not sure if this is just the same information or he's got new information, as this was posted on ESPN May 9th. However, I do want to kind of go back to what Jameson Williams' doctor has said about the situation. Jameson said this: should be ready to go by training camp. Jameson Williams' doctor, his surgeon, went on to say this about Jameson Williams. He said Jameson's goal is to play the first preseason game, obviously. He said, I said, look, depending on which team you go to, most teams are they're going to be conservative. You've got to understand that. And he'll get talked into it, but I know he's, in his mind, said he's going to be ready for game 1. He also added that Jameson Williams' ACL injury has been straightforward. There's a wide variety of ACL injuries, from pretty straightforward to very complex, and his was very straightforward one, which makes it easier for him for sure. Now, this is something that is brought up. We don't know this from the outside looking in, but I know that scouts look into this stuff. The medical reports, they look at, how the injury is, how it's recovering. As he said, how straightforward it is, how complex is the injury. Is this something that he's likely going to recover from, that it's recovering well and he's going to look good going forward. He's going to be fine. As I said before, I've heard this also came into play with a guy like Todd Gurley when he was coming out. He continues to say this: I'm sure you saw him on draft day, as we did. He looks like nothing ever happened, and he's kind of one of those guys where he looks so good, so fast, that I think the question for the medical staff of the Lions is going to be how fast to let him progress and get moving, because I think the course of history in the NFL has been to be relatively conservative and slow with a return for an athlete. Because Jameson got hurt in January, the last game possible, just like getting hurt in the NFL season, a lot of times the team will make a decision to kind of go slow in the summer and count for kind of a midseason return. But I think for all that stuff that I've seen and from how he's progressed, I think Jameson he'll be ready to go as quickly as everybody lets him go. So I think basically what he's saying there is, like, if you have a guy that's maybe injured at the beginning of the season, maybe you're trying to get him back for the season, like we saw with the Cam Akers. But when you have a guy that's injured at the very last game, he's going into the offseason, teams tend to seem to try to take it kind of slow. The example is always brought up of a guy like Cam Akers and him returning from his torn Achilles, which took place in July, and he returned in December. So it was like 6 months later that he ended up returning, which was a pretty darn fast return. And obviously, like he said, every injury is different. How complex, how straightforward is it? How has this progress been? But it sounds like it's been pretty good. And again, from what I've heard, the scout is that when these guys have these ACL injuries now, a lot of times you're anticipating these guys, they come back faster, stronger, and better than they ever were. They come back in awesome shape. And it's not like in the past or how long it takes. These guys can get back a lot faster. So very optimistic news there. I don't know how long it's going to take. I think he made a great point there. It will depend on, how fast the Lions want to take it. But the way he makes it sound is if, hey, look, Jameson, he's going to be ready to go. It's just how fast does the team want to progress that? And that'll be something that the Lions will have to take, of course, week to week, day to day. It's probably something we'll talk about all the way up until the season starts, whether or not he's going to play. I don't know I kind of doubt we'll see him in the preseason. We may a little bit, though, if he's ready by then. Jameson said, I should be ready to go by training camp. And if he's ready to go by training camp, that would be outstanding. Training camp, like if he's getting back and running, and again, that doesn't mean he's ready to play, but if he's getting back and running and moving around and putting in work by training camp, you have like another month and a half before the season starts. But that would be a really good spot, and you probably would see him at that point in opener. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think it could definitely be sooner than what they think. But again, most NFL executives, probably from what they saw when he came out of the draft, thought that it would take a little bit longer. So we'll just have to see where that goes. Now, there was that little report that he was going to wear number 89. I guess he said it on Instagram Live, and it was like, wait a minute, he's wearing 89. You think of Dan Campbell? Like, hey, Dan Campbell wore 89. Maybe that's something. And then apparently, I guess he went back on Instagram Live. He's like, nah, I don't mess with that. All right, I'm not wearing the number 89. Okay, and I kind of was digging it. I was like, okay, the 89, I could see that on the outside. No, it doesn't sound like he's down with that. We know he wore number 1 in college, so I guess number 89 isn't it. He's not down with that. Maybe he was just joking because he knew Dan Campbell wore it. I don't know. I didn't see the Instagram Live. I just read it online. But the players that were listed that have been waived by the Detroit Lions before rookie minicamp takes off. First off, we have linebacker Tavante Beckett. All right, this was the Marshall linebacker. He was the defensive player of the year at Marshall. Undersized. Lions kept him around last season. He didn't really play. He played at the end of preseason games. Showed some good effort. They kept him around. They said, we're going to keep him on a practice squad. We're going to, kind of develop him physically on the practice squad. But as we now see, he has been waived. Doesn't mean he can't end up back with the Lions. All these guys could at some point end up back with the Lions. But for now, Tavante Beckett has been waived, and the Lions do have a lot of names in the linebacker position. I mean, now, not all of them are going to be able to make it, right? But when you talk about guys like Jared Davis, who doesn't have much guarantees, Jared Davis actually has less guarantees than some of these UDFA signings. You have the Chris Boards. We're kind of deep at linebacker. We're just not sure who's going to make the team. That's what it really comes down to. There's not a lot of locks there. Sean Deion Hamilton, all of those guys. Next up, you have Rashad Berry, the edge rusher. He came from New England. We picked him up last season. Rashad Berry didn't play a ton for us either, but he did play a little bit. I think he actually did mix in a little bit during the season for us when we were really light on edge depth. He has been waived. Edge is another position where, we added to it a little bit. Of course, with a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, Julian Romeo, you have Austin Bryant. Someone may be a surprise cut at this positional group. James Houston could also possibly take some reps there. We'll see how they look to use him. Parnell Motley, the cornerback. Parnell Motley was with the Lions for a while last season, basically on their practice squad. He never really came in. He never really stepped into play. They never really put him on like the active roster to actually play. Making that transition, we had Will Harris playing cornerback, and we were really thin at cornerback, and the Lions didn't choose to bring up Parnell Motley after how long he's been there. I assumed they would, and they didn't. So obviously that probably wasn't a great sign. And as we know now, he has been waived. And cornerback is going to be a really tough spot to get into for anybody, and that's specifically the 53-man roster, because right now we really have 7 cornerbacks that you could argue are almost locks, including Chase Lucas. If you take him out, that's 6. And look, 6 cornerbacks. The Lions came in with 6 last season. So you got a lot of cornerbacks. It's going to be tough to get into that room. We brought in some guys in terms of UDFA. We brought in the draft pick. So it's going to be really tough to break into that position. Then you also have tight end Matt Sokol. He's been with the Lions a little while. He's actually been recently, right before starting recording this, picked up by the New England Patriots. So they brought him in. So there you go, Matt Sokol. Jared Pinkney, another tight end here. He has been released on an injury settlement. Jared Pinkney did play a very little bit last season. I think he played, 44 total snaps for the Lions. He technically played in 2 games, but he really didn't do much offensively for us. One of the games we saw him was the one where he threw the touchdown to Taylor Decker, right? We didn't really utilize him very much offensively, and the Lions felt like they had to get creative like that. I remember Dan Campbell talking after the game, because that was the Seattle game. We threw the touchdown to Taylor Decker. He's like, well, that's just what we had at the positional group, because at that point we were very light at the tight end position, and Jared Pinkney didn't really do much for us offensively, which again is probably not a great sign that you're throwing to your tackle over your tight end. So Jared Pinkney is another wave. And then finally, this is the most recent one. This is quarterback Steven Montez. Remember, he's coming from Washington. We had him basically, I think we had him all last season. He got in during the preseason to the Detroit Lions. He's stuck on the practice squad. Of course, we had the injury to Tim Boyle, so David Blau was your backup. Steven Montez around for depth, and the Lions kept him around. It seemed like they liked him to keep him around as long as they did. They bring Tim Boyle back. Steven Montez still sticks around on the practice squad, and I liked him a little bit. When I watched some of his film of where he was coming from, didn't have a ton of experience, of course, but it was like, okay, maybe there's something here down the road. Well, as of now, he has been waived. Now, we do know that the Detroit Lions are bringing in, now they brought back David Blau into Boyle, so they still have those 3, but they also are bringing in a quarterback for a tryout that we did a video on him. I like his film. I'm excited for him. I think there's legitimate potential to possibly sneak in as quarterback 3, take David Blau's spot. I don't know, or at least be the practice squad player. I'm excited for that guy. So this kind of opens that up, that potential where we could see a quarterback possibly take David Blau's role because of his contract, where it's at. There's not a lot of guarantees there. You could definitely see David Blau potentially getting cut and then having that quarterback step into that 3rd quarterback role when it comes to like the 53-man roster cuts. If the Lions decide to keep 53 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster, last season they did. But I also think this quarterback Connor Sampson, who's coming in for a tryout, could could possibly be that practice squad guy. So we'll see. Now let's talk about and take a little look at these players that should be attending Detroit Lions rookie minicamp. Okay, now of course this includes draft picks, undrafted free agent signings, and players coming in for tryouts. We have seen players miss rookie minicamp, but for the most part, all of those guys show up. Those are the players that should be attending rookie minicamp for the Lions, which starts tomorrow. Now, of course, like I said, this includes the draft picks. So you have Aiden Hutchinson. And look, we're going to go through all of these players and do breakdowns on them. We began that, and we're working through the draft. We're going to do it for undrafted free agents as well. I just definitely was unable to get to all of them before rookie minicamp starts. And plus, some of these guys may get cut. So if we wait a little bit, we may see like, oh, they got cut. What was the point of even doing the video? We'll see. I'm not rooting for anybody to get cut. I'm just saying that could definitely happen after rookie minicamp, you know, for a guy that tried out and maybe he makes the roster. And we talked about some of the tryout guys as well. But anyways, you got the draft picks. So you got Aiden Hutchinson, you got Jameson Williams, you got Josh Paschal, you have, let me try this, Kirby Joseph, you have you have James Mitchell, you have Malcolm Rodriguez, you have James Houston, and you have Chase Lucas. Okay, I think that's right. I was trying to do it off the top of my head. I was like, hold up, there's that gap there. It was like 70 picks. It was throwing me off. But you got those players, of course. You also have the undrafted free agent signings. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of these guys. Now, this isn't enough to do a breakdown on them. We're going to get to videos of them, like I said. But I do want to give you a little background. So you're like, oh, okay, I know about this player a little bit. So we'll start off at the running back position. You guys have brought him up. You may know more than I do about him. This is Greg Bell out of San Diego State University, who reportedly is getting 100K guaranteed. And, you know, some players get more guaranteed. It's just like a little bit, hey, we'll give you this much guaranteed. You should probably come over here. That doesn't mean they're locked to make the team. Obviously, the guaranteed money gives them a little bit more of an in, possibly to make the team, but it definitely doesn't make them a lock. We've seen guys like this get guaranteed money and then get cut. I'm pretty sure the Lions have had that happen very recently. Don't remember exactly who it was, but I'm pretty sure it's happened very recently in the past few years. Also, 5'10", 200-pound running back that last season put up some really good production. And it was really cool because he was coming off a very serious eye injury. He's also had foot surgery in the past. He comes back last season. He goes for almost 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns rushing. He played in a wide zone rushing scheme offensively, and it was a little interesting watching his rushing style. It was different. It wasn't like, you know, some of those patient, you know, find the hole and then burst through the hole. He kind of played like he was moving at 100 miles per hour seemingly all the time. Super fast taking the handoff. It was almost like he just took a ton of energy drinks and they were like, here you go. And he was like shaking. That's what he looked like when he was rushing the football. But he gets to speed extremely quickly. He's a pretty decisive runner. He's very willing to work between the tackles and take on some hits. My one knock I had with him very early was that he didn't seem to show much contact balance. I thought one issue is that when he made cuts, he got kind of high. He didn't really sink. And again, show that burst to be patient, sink, and explode. He's a little bit crazier as a runner, so you didn't see that kind of contact balance to break tackles, stay on his feet. But you saw the quickness. You saw him bounce outside. One thing that I would note that I didn't love is that you really didn't see much at all in the receiving side of things. So on third downs, you do wonder about the value that he would bring to the team on third down. I think he had 4 receptions all last season for 5 yards. And when I was watching him, there was really no routes he ran. Sometimes he would just sit in the flat. But most times if he was out there on third downs, it was for pass protection. And that could be the key for him is pass protection. It's maybe why we didn't see much Jamar Jefferson, because that was a very big question for him coming out of college. Was like, hey, he didn't do much as a receiving back either. And you don't really see much in pass protection. You know that's going to need work. And that can keep you off the field, right? If you can't bring that 3-down value, it's really hard to be a 2-down back. He does bring some pass protection value, I believe. He seemed to identify who the rusher was pretty well, and then he kind of threw himself at the legs of the defender. And sometimes it didn't work, and he would miss the guy, but you did see that you see some willingness to block. In the Lions, I mean, they were doing drills last year for pass protection for running backs. It's very important. Deuce Staley finds huge importance to that. He's like, you have to be able to protect the quarterback, and that's something I think he can do. But you do still wonder a little bit about what really is his value there, and also on special teams. Plus, he is a little bit of an older prospect. So that's just kind of a quick little background on Greg Bell. Again, we'll do a full breakdown on these guys eventually. Then you have tight end Derek Deese Jr. Man, Derek Deese Jr. is going to be fun. He's going to be fun to break down because this is a pretty big tight end. Now, not in terms of height. He's like 6'2.5", but he's just under 270 pounds. But he doesn't look like that. His weight is really well distributed. It's really a lot of it's in his lower half, it seems. And man, he can really pack some punch when he gets a really good delivery as a blocker. But that, because of his height, he does much better with the leverage side than a lot of tight ends do, because naturally he's lower than most guys. Now, sometimes he still gets up, and you like to see that be more consistent with his hand placement all around. The technique it kind of wavers, his technique does, but very physical. He can play in line. He worked from the slot. He can be utilized as a lead blocker. The blocking side, I gotta believe the Lions love. love, but he's not like one of those guys where it's like I had 3 receptions, but I can block. It's not like that. He's a good athlete. Now, the relative athletic score, things like that won't say it, but the way that he moves pretty fluidly in terms of being a route runner. Now, there's not much cut, there's not much separation getting given there, but he's a pretty smooth, fluid route runner that can work double moves. He can work from the slot. He can work in line. He's a guy that can get over top a little bit of the defense, and when you see it, I believe his drop rate is pretty high, which is a little bit concerning, but you do see him catch with his hands, and you see the body control to adjust, reach out for passes. He has a monstrous wingspan. He's going to be someone that's fun to watch. I didn't see a lot of drops when I watched him, but again, I didn't watch enough games. I think I watched like 2 of his games, went through those. It seemed to show some issues, catching through contact, but he could definitely snag it away from his body. Now, the hand technique didn't always seem great, but he still made some nice grabs away from his body, and he has that huge wingspan where he may not be the red zone threat like you usually think of with a tight end where it's like, oh, he's 6'7", just box him out, throw it up to him, but he was definitely a target down there that, again, 6'2", 270, the guy can block, and I know the Lions are going to love that. So I know we brought in James Mitchell, who is a very legitimate receiving threat. This is another guy that can be a good receiving threat. He just looks better and faster than he does. His play speed is much better than the scores test out. That's what I will say. He looked a lot faster than what his test numbers were, but Lions are clearly looking for some competition. They got rid of Sokol. They want another receiving target in the tight end room, but they always want guys that can block, and James Mitchell also kind of falls into that category. We continue to go through these names. I guess in a way we're kind of just taking a look at every UDFA the Lions have assigned, but not doing a full breakdown on these players individually. Next up, we have Obinna Eze, the offensive tackle from TCU. Before that, he was with Memphis. This is a player that's from Nigeria that didn't know what football was. He hasn't seen football up until he came over to America. Now, he came here to play basketball, but football stuck. He caught on to it extremely quickly. Goes to Memphis, redshirts his freshman season, starts a lot of games. He started 37 consecutive games in college, and while he definitely is going to need some work, and he's probably going to need some weight building as well, at the same time, man, he is a pretty good mover that has incredible balance when you watch him on film, and we did a full video on that player, so I won't hit it too much more than that for now. Then we have another offensive lineman, Kevin Jarvis, out of Michigan State, that also is pulling in some guarantee money, $155K, which is the second most, right behind Eze. What I didn't know about Kevin Jarvis, and while he's going to be fun to go break down, is that he's not just a guard. He played multiple positions on the offensive line, and his size kind of allows him to do that. The fact that he's 6'6", 325 pounds. Now, that is a little bit taller for a guard, but that's where he's played a majority of his games. 25 games he's played at right guard, but he also has played 3 games at left tackle and 11 games at right tackle for Michigan State, including last season where he played 4 games at right tackle towards the end of the year. So you definitely saw the versatility, but being able to play both says a couple things about the player. First off, the ability to get off the snap quickly and get into his stance quickly. And you have to be able to do that from the guard position. Of course, you're closer to the ball. You got guys lining up right over you. Get low, right? Especially for a guy that's 6'6", you need to show legitimate knee bend to be able to try to get under guys' pads to play the right guard position. And man, he just looked super physical when I was watching him. Just showed a lot of power when you were watching him. And then you see him move to right tackle and you're like, wow, he actually doesn't look too bad here. I mean, he looks a little bit limited. He looks a little bit limited in terms of being beat around the edge, not getting a ton of depth. He can be opened up a little bit, susceptible to counter moves. But you watch him against teams like Ohio State, Tyreek Smith, he does pretty well for the most part playing right tackle. He got beat a couple times again, when guys counter back inside or some speed rushers can possibly open him up with a bull rush. He may be a little bit limited trying to play tackle. You would definitely want to put help on his side, it seems, from what I've seen so far, with ready hands like an interior offensive lineman, but has shown the flexibility to pop out to the tackle position. So I can see why they gave some guaranteed money there. We also know that the Tommy Kramer situation is he doesn't have, guarantees, right? You can cut the guy and it's no dead cap for you this season. He's only on contract for this season and it's less than $1 million. So he's still not locked into the spot. Logan Stenberg's still in his rookie deal, but he got injured. He made the 53 last season, but then he was injured, so we didn't really see him. So they're leaving the competition door open for both the guard position and the tackle position, where you have Matt Nelson as well, who's also an exclusive rights free agent signing, as it absolutely should be. Now, I do feel pretty good about Tommy Kramer as the backup guard, so I can definitely see him winning that role. But backup tackle, and really, I mean, all the backups aside from Evan Brown, there are spots open where you could possibly earn a role or maybe just land on practice squad. You never know. Sometimes you need those guys, right? Sometimes you activate them for game day because for whatever reason this guy's out and you want the versatility. Versatility goes a long way. A guy like Eze hasn't played other positions on the offensive line, even though I think he could play right tackle and be a swing tackle. But you have a guy like Jarvis that can play multiple different spots on the offensive line, probably both guard spots. spots and in a pinch tackle. Not preferred, but he could. So I think that's pretty important. Another offensive lineman, and I know I mess up this guy's name. I probably should look up how to say his name. Zine Obed. No, that wasn't even close. Stop. I don't know. I have no idea. This is the offensive lineman out of Ferris State. The other big guard out of Ferris State. 6'4", 309 pounds. Now, we did talk about him a little bit in the past, but this is a player that's really nice as a pull blocker. Someone that can get outside the tackle box, that can work upfield. He's got a lot of strength and long arms, 34-inch arms, while also knocking out 30 bench press reps. Now, it doesn't touch Malcolm Rodriguez, who broke the record or anything like that, but he definitely has some power, and you can see it in short area situations where he can just get under your pads and completely drive you backwards. He definitely seems like he's gonna need some work, especially in pass protection, as a lot of their pass protection sets were not like, you know, your normal depth sets or things like that in the NFL. So he'll probably need a lot of work there. But this is a very powerful guy at 6'4" that played left guard for Ferris State last season. All right, so some offensive linemen. You know me, I love the offensive lineman competition. I'm all about that. How about the defensive lineman though? How about Demetrius Taylor out of Appalachian State? Now he's listed as a defensive tackle at 6'1", 290 pounds, but you look at the production. I mean, he's put up records at App State. I mean, he's put up records in the Sun Belt. Last season, he had 7 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss, and 24 total tackles. But you see consistent production when you look at his numbers over every season. He's a 5-year player for App State. But what really stuck out to me is that 10-yard split. His 10-yard split is a 1.69, which is pretty darn incredible. I mean, just to say the least, for a guy at his size. 27 bench press reps and a 4.5 shuttle, okay? So all those numbers look pretty good. Agility, but specifically that 10-yard split. And it shows up when you watch him. He played like a 3-4 defensive end. Seemingly last season, he's a guy that you could push inside of offensive tackles, which is probably what he'll do at the NFL. He'll probably push inside offensive tackles, work against a guard. Almost like a little bit of a tweener build when you take a look at sort of his arm length, which is listed at 32 inches, which isn't bad. It's like a little bit around the Aiden Hutchinson range, but it can be a little bit rough when you talk about trying to slide him inside, work him against some of those interior offensive linemen. His biggest issues right now seem to be taking on double team blocks, trying to hold his lane. But again, the Lions are doing things different. They're trying to get downhill this season. Everybody that they have brought in is all about first step explosiveness. It's about the athleticism. He's a very athletic, well-balanced guy that doesn't find himself on the ground very often. With all that weight, he balances his weight out really well. He's agile. He can work the defensive line. Probably could utilize him in some stunts. You could definitely get this guy upfield. So I think there's flexibility here. It's going to be an interesting role, though, to see where the Lions use him, because his arm length is not ideal. Like, if it was like 34, 35-inch arms, I'd be like, ooh, yeah, that's a really nice possible 5-tech something for the Lions, something like that. But it's not. So I think you want to keep him probably inside the tackle box, where he is lined outside of a tackle and pass rush. But I think you like him a little bit more on the inside. We have the edge rushers, but we could use another guy like this that can kind of move all around the interior, I guess you would say, of your defensive line, to pair with the Josh Paschal, who seems like he's going to be doing a similar thing. I think this guy's got a very legitimate shot to actually try to sneak his way, find a way onto this team at some point, because of where we are depth-wise, and because of not seeing Jayshon Cornell, because you don't have the Deshaun Hands, you don't have the Kevin Strongs. There is the Bruce Hectors, guys like that, but maybe because of that first step, just get off that burst, he is someone that intrigues the Lions with that production. And being a 5-year player, I have to watch more film on him before I make a really, you know, like, oh, this guy's that guy. First step shows up extremely fast when you watch him, all right? That ability to get to the backfield, just blow by offensive linemen with his first step, with that explosiveness off the line, time up the snap, and jump in the backfield and make plays is extremely impressive. He didn't really show much of a pass rush move from the little that I watched. It was more like, here's a long arm. I'm going to be active. I'm going to show some agility and keep working towards the quarterback and try to get under your pads because I'm only 6'1", which, yeah, I mean, usually, well, that's kind of short, but it actually could work to his benefit. But the thing is, man, that first step is nasty. Definitely some athletic trait that you can build on. And I think the Lions are still looking for depth in this area potentially. Stay on the defensive side of the ball with another UDFA signing. Let's talk about some cornerbacks. We have Cedric Boswell and we have Jermaine Waller out of Virginia Tech. So starting off with Cedric Boswell, and I had noticed with a lot of our UDFA signings, also some Trouts as well, a lot of guys are from the Michigan area or they're from Detroit. Cedric Boswell, he's from Birmingham. Last season with Miami of Ohio, but that's not where he started. He started with Iowa. He committed to Iowa. He had a lot of MAC school offers offers, but he committed to Iowa. He said that the coach there liked his speed. Reportedly, he ran a 4.34 at a Michigan State camp, which is really darn impressive. Last season was really the first time that he up like legitimate production at the college football level, which of course makes it really tough to get drafted when that is the case. Plus, you could probably argue he's a little bit undersized, 5'11", 185 pounds, but he did put up 7 pass defending, an interception, and 61 total tackles. To me, he looks more of like an off-man, off-zone coverage type of cornerback. He played a lot of half-turn and a cover 3 defense, some of that man-off coverage ability where he could sit back and break on routes. You saw some route anticipation while also being able to keep his eyes on the quarterback. There was one rep where he was actually beat, where the wide receiver made a little bit of a double move. He faked inside, then cut back outside, and he was beat on the play. But I noticed that he jumped on this without seeing the quarterback even look that way. You know, so it tells you he's not just staring at the quarterback's eyes and reading the eyes of the quarterback. He also has a really nice feel of the route while keeping my eyes into the backfield. Now, he got beat on this play, but it gave me some optimism for sure. Like, oh, he's actually jumping on that route. I noticed a lot of similar things with Chase Lucas, right? Chase Lucas is a nice man-off coverage corner that works downhill really well on routes. You'll see the same thing about Jermaine Waller as well. I'm excited to get into all these guys, but this is a very physical cornerback. Extremely physical. When you watch him try to fight off blockers, he's extremely physical working to fight off blockers. 61 total tackles is a lot for a cornerback. That's not really something that you normally see. He's working into a lot of run plays, and while he definitely missed some tackles, I think that speaks even more to the fact that he still had 61 total tackles. But I didn't see him really jump routes, so that'll be something that I continue to watch for as I continue to go through his film because I haven't seen a ton yet. The catch point is very aggressive at the catch point, trying to jar passes loose, working from behind, right? So that's just the kind of player that he seems like. Now, he can give some space. You also saw some occasions where it seemed like he kind of lost where the receiver was, getting very locked into the backfield. But at the same time, when he has the receiver in front of him, if he's in man-off coverage, sitting back, allowing things to happen in front of him, and he can break down on passes, it seemed to look like where he was at his best from the little that I have seen. He's a guy that absolutely can get flipped around, can get beat over top, will draw PIs very early. I think he had like 2 pass interference calls, and it was like, oh, that's not good. He said at the beginning, I mean, the guy is pretty darn raw. He just hasn't played a ton in college. So yes, does he draw some PIs? Absolutely, right? Is he great there? Is he a little too physical? Does he lose some routes seemingly behind him in zone coverage where he just lets a pass get behind him or a route get behind him that he doesn't necessarily see? Like I said, he's fine when he sees the route, but things can get behind him. Absolutely. But he's also hasn't had tons of experience. So this is one of those players that maybe you should get excited about the upside here of a guy that plays that physical. Also have Jermaine Waller out of Virginia Tech. He has a little bit more size, 6'1", 180. And Jermaine Waller, his testing scores did not come back very well. The guy ran a 4.68 official 40, which is not good at the combine. And he had 31-inch arms, which is actually pretty good. But he played a little bit different. He played a lot of press at Virginia Tech. A lot of press man, did some zone out of it, but did a lot of press work at Virginia Tech. And what I liked is his ability to really close space. Now, when I originally watched this player, I was like, man, I don't want to draft this guy. Definitely, I'm going to go back and dive into that, and we'll see where I kind of sit with it. However, when you do watch him, he does have a good knack for closing space on routes, getting connection, and kind of just sitting in the hip of receivers. But where he seemed to shine again was working downhill on passes. But he does close that space pretty darn well. He had this really sweet interception where he basically just took it out of the receiver's hands against North Carolina. He was a playmaker in that game. Sometimes he'll get caught face guarding a little bit where he doesn't seem to get his head turned around. His back pedal seemed a little bit choppy for how much press he was playing last season. Does seem to lack some power for run support and probably needs to add on to that a little bit. It is one of those guys where you may have to worry a little bit about, position that you put him in. What is his matchup? But he also did line up sometimes against tight ends, follow guys around in slot. I mean, he's a matchup piece at the same time where bigger, longer receivers or tight ends, sometimes they would use him as that piece that would go out and cover him as he would close space, try to play physical, and at the same time utilize some of that length. You question some of the deep speed, agility for some of the smaller, quicker receivers. But again, possibly an off-man coverage type of cornerback, but he has had the press experience. Let's go back to the offensive side of the ball. So we talked about cornerbacks. Let's talk about the guys that they covered. Those are receivers. Okay, of course. We have Khalil Pimpleton, we have John Johnson, and we have Corey Sutton. So let's start with Khalil Pimpleton first. This is a receiver that's been getting a ton of hype within the chats whenever we go live. The Central Michigan product at 5'7", 172 pounds. I could see why. I mean, I haven't watched a highlight tape on the guy, but I'm pretty sure if you put one together, it'd be pretty fun to watch. I know he had 2 returns for touchdowns in a game, which people have told me many times. Like, man, look, he had like 2 punt returns in the same game. I'm like, dang, that's pretty darn impressive. But you could definitely probably put together a pretty awesome highlight reel of this player. Now, the size is a very big question, and a lot of times that can really hurt you. You look at the guy, Kelvin Austin out of Memphis. He was just undersized. He was a really good receiver in a lot of ways. He was fast, he was explosive, he was a great route runner, good hands, but he was undersized, so he fell pretty far. Khalil Pimpleton definitely falls into that category at 5'7". Absolutely probably going to be limited to slot work, off the line work, behind the line of scrimmage work, but there was a report out there the Lions were interested in Wan'Dale Robinson, who I was definitely not a second-round fan of. I thought that was way too early. But Khalil Pimpleton, if they are interested in a receiver like that, he could definitely compete for a role like that. The guy ran a 4.49 40, has a 1.52 10-yard split, which is incredible, 4.04 shuttle time, and 14 bench press reps, which kind of stuck out to me. Like 14, that's a pretty good amount for a guy that's under 180 pounds. But I thought his toughness stuck out very quickly when I watched him, and I'm sure this is something that the Lions liked as well. Those players that take a hit, are willing to go up in the air, don't worry about getting hit over the middle of the field. You need that to be a very successful slot cornerback that can really consistently attack the middle, and he had that. The first one I saw was against Missouri. The guy was absolutely smacked, and it was like, bam, I mean, he's got lit up. 2 plays later, the guy's back on the field running routes, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. There's another team, the exact same type of thing happened, where again, he was just smacked, and he got back up, and he's back in the game, right? He's just taking those monster hits. I love that. He is extremely shifty, right? And he has a variety of moves. It's not just like he's like bouncing around everywhere. He uses a stiff arm for a guy at his size, pretty impressive. Physical runner, tough runner. He uses a stiff arm. He showed a nice little spin move, little body control. He's just shifty, which you kind of expect for guys that are 5'7", 170. I mean, I'm just being honest. But he is a shifty runner with the ball in his hands, and he's one of those guys you can get it behind the line of scrimmage, and maybe you can make something happen with it, but be creative with the ball. Not just be fast or quick, but be creative with the football. The acceleration, really that burst off the line of scrimmage, kind of just shoots his momentum forward from his back leg to the front, and he just launches off the line of scrimmage, especially from the slot. He can just launch off the line. I thought he struggled a little bit with cornerbacks and defenders that got physical with him. Saw it on underneath routes as well. Also, I thought his hands looked a little questionable. Again, I'll dive into this more when we do a breakdown on him, but his hands seemed a little questionable. Not only did he get a couple concentration drops underneath where no one's there and he just drops it, but you also had him really using his body for support. Like, I'm talking a ball is in the air, and instead of just catching it like this, toe tapping the sideline, he leaps up to try to get his chest into the catch. That's never a good sign when that is the case. Now, had some great catches. I mean, like I said, he's willing to sky up in the air. He made an awesome catch that looked like a Jahan Dotson type of catch. And I was like, wow, it's something to look for. I think pass catching definitely wasn't as clean. Probably going to be limited to slot, but he just looked like a tough, competitive receiver.
Now, definitely seemed like a different style than like a Khalif Raymond, and I'll have to watch his punt return tape. But if he does well here as a pass catcher, the Lions may be looking for more of a rack kind of creative underneath option, because Khalif Raymond is more of an outside, inside, versatile, good route running receiver with good hands, but he's not as creative with the ball in his hands. He's more just fast. However, this player is a little more creative, so they are looking for that. Maybe there's that chance that this guy finds a way to slip into the roster. That's not saying taking Khalif's spot, because what Khalif got paid, I think he's going to make the team, but possibly slip onto a roster spot or a practice squad guy.
I don't know why he didn't get the ball more sometimes. It was like you stopped seeing him for his long stretches, and you're like, what's going on? Why is he not getting the football? Why are they not giving him the ball more? But he's a guy you can get creative with. I believe that. The next receiver we have is another guy that could be limited to slot in the NFL. That's John Johnson out of Tulsa. This is a 5'10", 183-pound receiver that has put on a little bit of weight, which is good for a guy at his size to put on a little bit more weight. I'm excited to watch more, because the narrative with him is that he has really bad hands. I mean, that's just what's thrown out there. I definitely don't think his hands are good by any means. I don't know if they're as bad as maybe it kind of gets let off to be. It's still one of those things that feels like it was kind of thrown out there, or maybe there was some sort of stat that was thrown up and everybody's just like, his hands are awful. I wouldn't say his hands were awful. They definitely didn't seem like that. And man, he was productive in some games. First game I watched is Ohio State, and you're just like, wow, he is extremely productive in this game. Like, and you know, I say limited to slot. Probably in the NFL, it's best for him to either play slot or play off the line. I don't really like him on the line of scrimmage, but he did line up everywhere for Tulsa. They put him on the outside. They put him in motion. They moved him all over the place. His motions were kind of strange. Almost looked like he was playing arena football, the way that he was handling those. What I would say with the hands is that you did notice, like, if a pass was behind him, it wasn't one of those things where he would reach out, grab it, and continue to run. He would turn his entire body, try to like reset his feet, and then catch the football before he made something happen. So it limited some of the rack potential there. I think more than anything, his hands didn't look extremely strong. He didn't look extremely strong plucking passes really far away from his frame, which is why he kind of resets his feet. That's not to say he can't can't catch the football because he can. I know he has, some body catches. So hands, definitely a concern, but maybe not as much as it's made to be at times. There is, and again, this is maybe another thing that's over-exaggerated. There's good speed here. He can be a threat to take off the top, but he's not by any means some kind of like blazing speed guy. I mean, he is threatening over top, and he can be a target from the slot. There is no safety help to go over top and beat you deep, but he didn't have blazing speed. And I was watching him like, I just don't see it. I mean, I hear it, but I don't see the speed like some people say that he has. It's not bad. I guess reportedly at his pro day, he ran a 4.62, which feels about right. I mean, a 4.62 feels about right for him, but it is something that can be effective from the slot position for sure. And he seems to have a relatively high ceiling for what he could be as a route runner. Right now, it seems a little bit limited. Sometimes you would just see him run the same route over and over, which is just like, hey, drag across the middle, and that's all he did. Again, you talk about acrobatic catches. You talk about a guy that makes some wow grabs. He has some wow grabs out there. There's some very acrobatic catches that he has, like this one against Ohio State. Getting up there, willing to leave his feet in the middle of the field in traffic is something not all the guys are willing to do. I didn't like him on the outside. And it'll be something I have to watch more, but I don't think that's where you probably want him. On the outside, you want him probably off the line, or you want him in a stack situation, or just condensed to the line, playing a little bit tighter. But outside, definitely seem to have issues with press, and he doesn't have the burning speed where it's like I'm blowing by this outside corner consistently. Didn't really have that, and he seemed to really struggle working off of press, getting separation, playing through those physical cornerbacks on the outside.
Also, his route running didn't seem to be the smoothest or most polished. There was a lot of times where he was just kind of running into defenders like this one.
And then you have Corey Sutton out of App State. Corey Sutton is a 6'3", 205-pound receiver that ran a 4.56. He's got a 37-inch vertical, which is nice. 4.12 shuttle, which is nice. Seemingly could do a little bit more than I initially anticipated in terms of depth of a route tree. I mean, being able to win underneath, but also being able to win over top. I mean, you hear the thing like, oh, he's the best deep threat. There's that's thrown out there, that headline. The guy did have 23 receptions for 30-plus yards, but there is, I think, some ability to possibly win underneath more than I anticipated originally, and that's because his feet off the release are really good. He can win with his feet with some of that agility off the release setup defenders. Right now, he needs to improve that hand usage, because that's where he can get caught up, is he can get kind of jammed off the line, thrown off his route, and he doesn't get that separation. His feet check out, but if he's jammed, if he's in a press situation, it's not that great. So he needs to improve his hand usage from what I've seen. Definitely seems to have the strength to do so, but definitely just needs to improve that hand usage. You do see strong hands, where he can pluck the ball away from his body, right? We just talked about that with John Johnson. And you see some of the routes he'll run on film. It's like, okay, that's what the Lions do. Like you saw Dwayne Baldwin, we looked at him out of Michigan. But like Josh runs, you see some of those corner routes, and you're like, oh, okay, I see that little speed corner route, how smooth and how fluid that is. He's also a guy that can line up in a slot. I mean, that's always the fun thing to talk about. Hey, big slots. Can line up in a slot and be effective there as well. We've seen him line up as a big slot, and he has a knack for drawing PIs. I don't know what it was, but for some reason, it seemed like every time he went deep, it was like pass interference. And he's not that fast. I mean, he's fat, but he's not that fast where he's threatening guys over top. He's just pretty physical, and he plays through contact well as a pass catcher down the field. I think he's good on his feet, but he doesn't really burst off the line, right? His acceleration off the line, I thought some of his release tended to kind of waver a little bit, sometimes look faster than other times, but the acceleration wasn't as much there as it was more of a strider speed when you watched him. And again, you also talk about ball tracking, which did show up to be a little consistent, but I talk about the big, plays that he has. 23 catches of 30-plus yards. He also had a 90-yard touchdown, which I'm pretty sure it's still a record for App State. But what you notice is that 90-yard touchdown wasn't a 60-yard pass. His ability to make things happen once the ball is in his hands. Now, everybody likes to speak about, well, he's fast, he's quick, he's this, he's that, he could be good after the catch. But how many guys are actually good after the ball is in their hands, especially on the outside? It's not easy to find that. This is an area where I think he actually sticks out. I mean, everything else, cool, but this is where he sticks out because he makes things happen once the ball is in his hands. Not very fast, not very agile or elusive or the strongest runner, but he just has a knack of picking up extra yards. The play doesn't end when he catches it. Even if it's 30 yards down the field, he's looking for work after the ball's in his hands that eats up angles. I think someone said that really well. Eats up angles, finds the space, and finds a way to pick up extra yards. So that ability is huge, and it's not easy to find, especially guys at his size on the outside. As a blocker, I thought the effort could have been better here. He kind of just walls off guys. Sometimes it did open up big runs, but I thought the effort could have been better. Sometimes just like he kind of stood there and he didn't really actually block. He was just like, okay, I'm going to just stand in your way. The effort could have been better. What's cool about Corey Sutton is that it feels like that entire receiving group that they had over there this past year has been that way for a few years. So when you watch him, you see the same guys in 2019 that you saw last season. Now, I'm not saying he was even the best receiver on that team, at least production-wise. Number 14, don't know who he was, man. He was eating. You're just like, whoa, he just keeps popping. But there is things that the Lions could like here potentially to compete for a backup outside receiver role, or again, potentially down the road as a practice squad player if you needed it, or whatever that may be. But he's very intriguing because of what he can do once the ball is in his hands. He didn't hit on this one. We also have one more UDFA signing, and that is tight end Nolan Given. I don't know how is Given? I don't know. Out of Southeastern Louisiana. He was also with Ball State, I believe, before that. He's getting $10K guaranteed, so a little bit of guaranteed money throw that direction as well. Like we said, Lions are looking for guys that can help and give him a little bit of receiving upside. This guy's listed at 6'2", 250 pounds. 250 pounds. So again, not 6'6", not 6'7". Same thing with James Mitchell. Not the super high cut guys that can't help in line. That's something that the Lions have been clear with when you see the guys bringing in. You have to be able to help us block in the line, right? You have to be able to play these heavy personnel sets, possibly lead block, get in line and block, and then release from the line and go make a play. You look at a guy like Derek Deese, guy lined up in a slot, but he could also do it from in line. That's what you're seeing with a lot of the size here. Now, this player seemed a little bit more of a body catcher that really limited what he did after the catch. But I guess for tight end, I just want you to catch the football. It's just as simple as that. He was seemingly, though, a vertical threat. That wheel routes, seam routes, anything upfield, he was a threat for that offense. I'm going to be honest, though, I haven't watched enough film. I've probably watched the least amount on Nolan, so I'll hold off a little bit there. But last season, he had 40 receptions for 378 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he's got long arms. 34-inch arms, which definitely helps his wingspan, even though a lot of catches were kind of body catches, and 17 bench press reps. So there you go. Those are the Lions UDFA signings. Now, we do have a few tryouts as well, just to hit on very quickly here. First one, Connor Sampson. All right, these are the guys that Lions didn't sign. They didn't get signed anywhere, and you're just like, hey, we want to bring you in for a tryout, show what you can do. And it's very possible that these players take UDFA spots, take someone's spot on the 90-man roster working through this offseason. It happens a lot. Even these guys that it's like, hey, he got 10K guaranteed, does not mean he will be here for the remainder of the offseason workouts. Not even talking the 53-man roster cut. So these tryouts are extremely important. Usually you get like one player that sticks on through the tryout, and the Lions have 4. Sometimes you get none, sometimes you get more. First one, Connor Sampson. We did a video on him, so I won't talk about it much, but I'm a very big fan of Connor Sampson. The statistics aren't outstanding. He does have a lot of interceptions, but I love the way that he plays. I love his ability, the touch he has on passes, the way that he moves the pocket poise that he plays with, the pro-style offense that he played in, the identifying, the pass rush before the snap, handling those responsibilities. I liked a lot of what he could be, and his athleticism inside the pocket really stands out to me with a beautiful ball that he can put on the sideline. So we have a full video. You can check that out, but I could see legitimately Connor Sampson being either the 3 quarterback, because I don't think Boyle's going anywhere, or definitely locking on to the practice squad if we can keep him around and get him there. The player that we have is Jalen Martin out of Pitt State. He is a 6'3", 210-pound receiver. What's really cool about Jalen Martin is that this is a guy that was a huge Lions fan growing up. He said that he would rush home from his football games when he was younger. They would rush home to go watch the Lions play. And he says, he's a big Calvin Johnson guy. It's because he's from Detroit. Let me throw that out there. But he's a big Calvin Johnson guy, Jalen Martin, and he said that the Lions liked his speed, they liked his size, and they liked his potential as a route runner. Haven't really been able to find much film on him, so I can't talk much more than that. But when I do, I will talk about it, and we'll see if his name pops up this week. Next up, we have wide receiver Hunter Rison. I think that's how you say it. It could be Risen, but I'm thinking it's Rison. Either way, this is a receiver out of Grand Valley State, another Michigan player here. 38 receptions for 516 and 6 touchdowns last season. Now, I watched one of his games against Ferris State in 2020. And it was kind of funny. I didn't realize Herman Moore and Joik Bell were doing some kind of coaching thing there. I was like, what the heck's going on? Why is Herman Moore and Joik Bell here? But you also got to see him and then the other offensive linemen. So you got to see kind of that, both on the field at the same time. This is a very legitimate deep threat. And again, I didn't kind of find a ton of film on him, but he was a very legitimate deep threat that took the top off all the time. Most of his routes were vertical routes. Usually got a step. The passes weren't always very accurate. I know that comes up with John Johnson a lot too. Passes were not very accurate. Put him in a lot of tough positions. But he is, what I took away immediately was like, man, he's aggressive at the catch point, right? I mean, there's guys that kind of wait for it to come to him. There's guys that show, soft hands in space. I can toe tap. But there's guys that attack the football. That is Hunter Rison. He attacks the football deep down the field. His hands may be something that comes into question a little bit bit here, but he was a big-time playmaker, a deep threat for Grand Valley State. So do we think the Lions are looking for a deep threat? I would say so. It kind of looks like they're looking at guys that can stretch the field a little bit. Hunter Rison is 5'11", 196. He is 23 years old, so that's something to make note of. And then finally, you have Najee Reams, the safety out of North Carolina A&T. I won't stay on this one too much because we have talked about him before, and I do need to find more film on him. But what I have seen is he's a big safety. He's 6'2", 195 pounds, and he's got good straight line speed. That is a kind of a tackling machine, right? He has kind of a feel for tackling, working downhill, being aggressive, thumping guys. That's just what he does. He had 9 total tackles against Duke this past year. He's aggressive in that way, and he's aggressive working downhill. So I could see some flexibility here for a guy that could possibly slide down into the box or a guy that could play deep. Definitely seems like a schematic fit with some long speed, which is great. Definitely seems like a 2-shell type of safety that I want, you know, taking on half the field, not playing single high, even though that he may have this long speed for that. Definitely like him a little bit more, just working half the field, working downhill, coming down on routes, all that would be exciting. But he also could possibly do some work underneath with good speed and willingness to tackle. Even though his angles weren't always great, very willing to tackle. So those are the 4 guys also coming in for Trout. So a lot of names. I know it's a lot there, but they're names you got to keep an eye on because you may hear this week, hey, guess what? Connor Sampson's balling. And it's like, okay, well, there you go. I knew it. But no, it could be, you could hear all these names pop up and all these guys have a shot. Keep in mind, just because they stay on now doesn't mean, hey, they made it 53. Most of these guys won't make the 53. There's a chance that none of them make the 53, but some of them could. We know what UDFA did last season, right? Jerry Jacobs, AJ Parker, Brock Wright, Tommy Kramer. I mean, that's 4 guys, just bam off the top of my head, that were impactful for the Lions last season that were UDFAs. So when you look at these, 11, 12 UDFAs plus the tryouts, don't just write them off. There are guys with legitimate potential here to make the team at all these spots. Some spots are definitely going to be difficult to punch into, like running back. Well, running back could be possible, but receiver, cornerback could probably be a little bit tough, but you never really know, right? Linebacker, safety, offensive line depth, all those spots seem to open. Defensive line depth possibly here. Cornerbacks can be tough to hop into, but you never know, man. And one of these guys could be big time for us. Jerry Jacobs was big time last year, and maybe Derek Deese Jr. is big time for us. Maybe Connor Sampson is big time for us. Who knows, man? So there you go. A little bit of a rundown there. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. We'll break these guys down individually as the offseason continues. Same thing with the draft picks. Thanks for watching.